In this video, we're going to be covering pre-algebra, adding and subtracting decimals, similar to what we did in the last video, which was adding and subtracting integers. There's a lot of different methods I did in the last video. There was a football method, the number line method, the money method. The one that I prefer is the one that I found just be more successful as far as students understanding the material. So I'm going to do that one, and the way that one works is we base the sign on the greater value of the two numbers that we're given. Whichever number is bigger, we're going to use that sign as our answer. Let me just get into it and I'll explain it as we go along. So let's start with number 1. It says 5.4 plus negative 9.7. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite that as 5.4 plus and minus becomes minus 9.7. Okay, because the signs are different, meaning 5.4 is a positive, or has a positive associated with it, and the 9.7 has a negative associated with it, meaning to the left of the number there's a positive sign or a negative sign, and the 5.4 doesn't have anything next to it, so we assume it's positive. If the signs are different, you're going to find the difference between the numbers. So let's find the difference between 9.7 and 5.4 by subtracting them. 9.7 minus 5.4. 7 minus 4 is 3, bring down the decimal. 9 minus 5 is 4, so we end up getting 4.3 as the difference. Now, what about the sign? So between 5.4 and 9.7, the 9.7 is a greater number, so we take the sign associated with that. So we end up using the negative 4.3. Okay, number 2, 10.8 plus negative 4.73. So let's go ahead and rewrite that as 10.8 plus and minus becomes minus 4.73. We just subtract those as we normally would. So 10.8 minus 4.73. Make sure you align the decimals. And if you need to add a 0, you can. You can add an infinite amount of zeros. It's not going to change the number. So this 0 becomes a 10, and this 8 becomes a 7. 10 minus 3 is 7. 7 minus 7 is 0. Bring down the decimal. 10 minus 4 is 6, so we get 6.07. Okay, number 3. Negative 0.5 plus 0.3. So because they're different signs, meaning the 0.5 has a negative to the left of it, and the 0.3 has a positive to the left of it, they're different signs, so we're going to find the difference. So we always put the larger number on top, so 0.5, and subtract 0.3 from that. So when we subtract those, we end up getting 0.2. Because the 0.5 in the original problem is greater than the 0.3, we're going to use that sign. So the negative is associated with the 0.5, so we end up getting negative 0.2. Okay, number 4, negative 4.79 plus negative 0.4. So let's go ahead and rewrite that as negative 4.79. A positive and a negative makes a negative 0.4. Now, because the signs are the same, meaning it's negative 4.79 minus 0.4, the signs are the same, we're going to add the numbers and put a negative on it. So we end up getting 4.79 plus 0.4, align those decimals. You can add a 0 if you'd like. 9 plus 0 is 9, 7 plus 4 is 11, bring down a decimal. 1 plus 4 plus 0 is 5, so we get 5.19, and it's going to be a negative 5.19. Okay, number 5, 3.305 plus 1.7. So there's no trick with having a negative or anything like that, so we'll just write it as we see it and add those zeros, and we know that we can just add straight up and down. So let's do 5 plus 0 is 5, 0 plus 0 is 0, 3 plus 7 is 10. Put the decimal. 1 plus 3 plus 1 is 5. And then we end up getting 5.005. 5. Okay, number 6. Negative 3.6 plus 0.43. Because the signs are different, we're going to find the difference between the two. So we get 3.6 minus 0.43. Make sure you put that 0 up there. This 6 becomes a 5, and this 0 becomes 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. 5 minus 4 is 1. Then we get a 3 here. We get 3.17. Again, in the original problem, it says negative 3.6 plus 0.43. Because the 3.6 is greater than 0.43, we're going to use the sign associated with 3.6, which is a negative, so we get negative 3.17. Okay, number 7. Negative 4.3 plus 14.5. So what we want to do on this, again, is because the signs are different, we want to find the difference between the two. So we're going to do 14.5 minus 4.3. When we subtract those, we get 10.2. The 14.5 is greater than 4.3, so we're going to use the sign associated with 14.5, which is a positive, so it's just a positive 10.2. Okay, number 8. Negative 7.1 plus 3.63. Because the signs are different, we're going to find the difference, so we'll do 7.1 minus 3.63. We have to add the 0 up here. This 1 becomes a 0, this 0 becomes a 10, 10 minus 3 is 7, this 0 becomes a 10, this 7 becomes a 6, 10 minus 6 is 4, bring down the decimal, 6 minus 3 is 3, so we get 3.47, but we have to put a negative 3.47 because the 7.1 is greater and has a negative associated with it. Okay, number 9. 13.7 plus 3.2, that's just adding straight across, so we end up getting 16.9 for that. Okay, number 10. Negative 10.9 plus 6.1. So what we want to do on this is find the difference because the signs are different, so we get 10.9 minus 6.1. When we subtract those, we get an 8 here, bring down the decimal, 10 minus 6 is 4. Because the 10.9 is greater than 6.1, we use the sign associated with it, so it's going to be a negative 4.8. Okay, number 11. Find each difference. 2.2 minus 7.3. So if there's nothing written in front of that 2.2, we assume it's a plus, so it's positive 2.2 minus 7.3. Because the signs are different, we're going to find the difference between the two. So we do 7.3 minus 2.2. When we subtract those, we get a 1 here. 7 minus 2 is 5, so we get 5.1. Because the 7.3 is greater than 2.2, we use the sign associated with 7.3, which is a negative, so we get a negative 5.1. Okay, number 12. Negative 8.1 minus negative 8.9. So what we want to do on this is rewrite that so we don't have two signs next to each other. So we end up getting negative 8.1. A minus and a minus is a positive 8.9. Okay, let me show you a different thing that different method also that you can do, or just rearranging them. You can switch these out, switch the numbers, as long as you take the signs with it. What I mean by that is instead of writing negative 8.1 plus 8.9, you can rewrite that as 8.9 minus 8.1. Let me put a positive on that 8.9. All we really did is go ahead and circle these so you can see. So all you really did was substitute those and you took the signs with it. So you basically wrote positive 8.9 minus 8.1. That's all we did, which is fine. As long as you take the sign with it, it doesn't change the value. So what we end up getting when we do 8.9 minus 8.1 is 0.8. Okay, number 13. 2.9 minus 9.4. Because the signs are different, the 2.9 has a positive, we can find the difference. So we do 9.4 minus 2.9. When we subtract those, this becomes 14, this becomes 8. 14 minus 9 is 5. Bring down the decimal. 8 minus 2 is 6. So we get 6.5. And our answer is going to be negative because the 9.4 has a negative to the left of it, and it's larger. The 9.4 is larger than 2.9. So we end up getting negative 6.5. Okay, number 14. Negative 3.9 minus 8.9. Because the numbers, because the signs are the same, we are going to add them and then put that sign with whatever number we get. So we get 3.9 plus 8.9. When we add those up, we get an 18 here. Bring down the decimal. 1 plus 3 plus 8 is 12. So we get 12.8. Because they're both negatives, negative 3.9 and minus 8.9, our answer is going to be negative 12.8. Okay, number 15. 9.8 minus 7.1. Let's go ahead and just subtract that straight as we normally would. 8 minus 1 is 7. Bring down the decimal. 9 minus 7 is 2. So we get 2.7. Okay, number 16. Number 16. Negative 18.278 minus negative 6.8. So again, we want to rewrite it so we don't have two signs next to each other. So we're going to go ahead and write negative 18.278 minus and minus is a plus 6.8. So because the signs are different, we're going to find the difference. So let's go ahead and write 18.278 minus 6.8. Make sure those decimals are aligned. Can add zeros here. 8 minus 0 is 8. 7 minus 0 is 7. This 2 becomes a 12, and this 8 becomes a 7. 12 minus 8 is 4. Bring down the decimal. 17 minus 6 is 11. So we get 11.478. Because the 18.278 is greater than the 6.8, our answer is going to be negative. So we get negative 11.478. Okay, number 17. 17.9 minus negative 19.4. So let's go ahead and rewrite it so we don't have two signs next to each other. So we get 17.9, negative and negative is a positive, 19.4. So we can just add those as we normally would. So what we end up with is a 13. Bring down the decimal. 1 plus 7 plus 9 is 17. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So we get 37.3 positive. Okay, number 18. 15.5 minus 15.5. Anything minus itself is going to be 0. Number 19. 1.58 minus negative 13.6. So let's go ahead and rewrite that as 1.58. Negative and negative is a positive. 13.6. Just add those like we normally would. 1.58 plus 13.6. Add a 0. 8 plus 0 is 8. 5 plus 6 is 11. Bring down the decimal. 1 plus 1 plus 3 is 5. Then a 1. So we get 15.18. Okay, number 20. 1.81 minus 17.17. Because the 1.81 has no sign in front of it, it's positive. So the signs are now different. We have a positive 1.81 and a minus 17.17. So we'll find the difference. 17.17 minus 1.81. Subtract those. 7 minus 1 is 6. This becomes 11. This becomes 6. 11 minus 8 is 3. 16 minus 1 is 15. So we get 15.36. Because the 17.17 is a larger number, it's going to be negative 15.36. Okay, 21. Evaluate each expression. So they're just mixing it up now. 19.4 plus 24.2. Just add those normally like we normally would. What we end up with is a 6. Bring down the decimal. 9 plus 4 is 13. 1 plus 1 plus 2 is 4. So we get 43.6. 6. Number 22. Negative 14.8 minus negative 9.7. Rewrite it so that we only have one sign instead of two next to each other. So a negative and a negative becomes a positive 9.7. Because the signs are different, we're going to find the difference or subtract them. 14.8 minus 9.7. 8 minus 7 is 1. Bring down the decimal. 14 minus 9 is 5. So we get 5.1. Because the 14.8 is a larger number than 9.7, we're going to use the sign associated with the 14.8, which is a negative, so we get negative 5.1. Okay, number 23. Negative 9.1 plus 3.5. Because the signs are different, we're going to find the difference between the two, so we do 9.1 minus 3.5. This becomes 11, 9 becomes an 8, 11 minus 5 is 6, bring down the decimal, 8 minus 3 is 5, so we get 5.6. We have to use a negative because the 9.1 is greater than the 3.5, so we get negative 5.6. Okay, number 24, 0.96 minus 8.5. We already know that our answer is going to be a negative because the 8.5 is a greater value than 0.96, so we use the sign associated with the 8.5, which is a negative. So let's go ahead and find the difference between the two. 8.5 minus 0.96, put a 0 here. This becomes 10, 5 becomes 4, 10 minus 6 is 4. This becomes 14, 8 becomes 7, 14 minus 9 is 5. Bring down the decimal and we get a 7, so we end up with negative 7.54. Okay, number 25. 9.5 minus negative 19.3. So we want to go ahead and rewrite that so we don't have two negatives next to each other, so we get 9.5, a minus and minus becomes a positive, 19.3. So let's just go ahead and add those like we normally would. 5 plus 3 is 8, 9 plus 9 is 18, 1 plus 1 is 2, so we get 28.8. Number 26, 3.4 minus negative 12.1. So let's go ahead and rewrite that. So we get 3.4, negative and negative is a positive, 12.1. So because they're both positive, we can add them like we normally would. 3.4 plus 12.1, get a 5 here, decimal, 3 plus 12 is 15, so we get 15.5. Okay, number 27. Now we're adding three numbers, 8.7 plus 3.8 plus 12.3. So let's do this first part. 8.7 plus 3.8. 8 plus 7 is 15. Bring down the decimal. 1 plus 8 plus 3 is 12. So we get 12.5 plus, put this number here, 12.3. When we add those up, we get 24.8. Okay, number 28. Negative 13.6 plus 12 minus negative 15.5. So let's do this part first. Negative 13.6 plus 12. Because they're different signs, we want to find the difference. So we're going to do 13.6 minus 12.0. We end up getting a 6 and a 1, 1.6. So we're going to use a negative 1.6 because 13.6 is greater than 12, and we use that sign. 1.6, and it's a minus and a minus, so we're going to rewrite that as plus 15.5. Because the signs are different, we're going to subtract those, so we get 15.5 minus 1.6. 5 becomes 15, this 5 becomes 4, 15 minus 6 is 9, put a decimal, 14 minus 1 is 13, so we get a positive 13.9. Okay, number 29, 3.4 minus 5. So let's do that part first. We're going to subtract them because they're different signs. So 5.0 minus 3.4, this 0 becomes 10, this 5 becomes 4, 10 minus 4 is 6, bring down the decimal, 4 minus 3 is 1, 1.6. Because the 5 is greater than the 3.4, we're going to put negative 1.6 and then the minus 10.4. Because these are the same signs, we're going to add them. So we get 1.6 plus 10.4. 6 plus 4 is 10. Bring down the decimal. 1 plus 1 is 2. Bring down that 1. We get 12 for this one. Okay, number 30. Negative 5.6 minus negative 12.6 plus negative 6.6. So let me go ahead and change all the signs right away. So we get negative 5.6, minus and minus becomes plus, 12.6, positive and a negative becomes a negative 6.6. Okay, so let's do this part, the negative 5.6 plus 12.6. Because they're different signs, we're going to subtract them. So we get 12.6 minus 5.6. When we subtract those, we end up getting 7. 7.0, we can just write it as 7. So we end up getting 7 minus 6.6. When we subtract those, we end up getting a 0.4. And this is adding and subtracting decimals.